Well, hello there, and welcome to day 18 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. Well, after treating myself yesterday for a slightly more pop culture film, I thought I'd go for something more film historical. So I sat down and have finally watched one of the quintessential cinema history movies, All the President's Men. It's an interesting experience watching a classic like this, one of the Criterion collection, in regards to the fact that so much cinema has been influenced by films made like this. I often talk about the problem with Citizen Kane, where with Citizen Kane, at the time, so many revolutionary cinema techniques were being pioneered that the problem now is that they've been used time and time again and built on, but they are foundational. And so one has to watch one of these films with the knowledge that a film such as that defined the genre or the filmmaking process or the culture of cinema that we have today. Now, All the President's Men, there are two strands within the narrative. I won't go too much into the plot because, well, the film is 44 years old and everything that could have been said about the film has been said, and I'm certain that people have written PhD theses on All the President's Men. But there are two strands within the narrative, which is, of course, the drama of the scandal, that's to say, the examination of, of what was happening and how the impact of the information being gathered, but then also the representation of journalism and the practices of journalism. When I was watching it, I thought that the film I would be comparing it to the most from the contemporary field would be The Big Short, in terms of, or something like Bombshells, where it examines a sort of an analysis of culture of the time, and a major event that had massive ramifications, considering that the film was only made 1 or 2 years after the scandal dropped. I thought it would be much more self-reflexive. But what I ended up comparing it to was Spotlight, the film that looked at the scandal exposing child abuse within the Catholic Church. Because similar to All the President's Men, both of these films aren't really about the source that they're examining. That is a key aspect of it. But as I say, it's more about the journalistic process. And so therefore it can be read as very dry and about gathering of information and about the sort of meticulous and almost arduous way that they have to make phone calls, knock doors, ratify and pieces of information that they're given. They might be given something from an anonymous source, but then they have to have a valid source to verify that information. And so it's interesting in respect of, I think after this, a big problem we had when it came to these kinds of narratives, probably from the 80s through to the noughties, was what you might refer to as the sexing up of of the dramas, or maybe the soap operification of it, where there was almost like an attitude that we cannot just represent this. We have to look at the personal lives of characters, and very much the television example I can think of is like The Wire, where it's very much about the procedure in in great detail, but alongside the personal lives and dramas of the people who are involved. Whereas this film never felt like it needed to go there, partly because of their direct involvement and obviously being based on the articles that they wrote. Woodward and Bernstein, we actually know practically nothing about them outside of their role in uncovering the information. They are, for lack of anything of a better example, they are the point of view characters. They obviously have skills and conflicts between them. There's a big issue about one having a little more experience than the other, and of course the external pressures of the fact that the threat of the paper and significantly more experienced journalists essentially wanting to take the story. But in terms of who they are as people, and whether they were married, whether they had children, whether they were having affairs, whether none of that information is displayed. And I was thinking about Spotlight did something very similar, where we don't really learn much about the news team who uncover their story, because it's a distraction from the journalistic process. As much as there's a desire to obviously make drama more interesting by or more engaging by going, who are these people? What was their story? And sort of maybe I understand the film Dark Water really gives a personal slant to why someone would be motivated to put their career and their home life, their actual personal life, at risk for something that frankly is just a job. Whereas this film, it's only towards the end that we ever get a sense that they are under threat personally, and the stress that's taking on them. But again, we don't know what that means in their home life. The film was remarkably, to me, I was gearing up for at least another 20 minutes of drama based on the the aftermath of the revelations and the consequences on them. But actually the film, and this is going to be a spoiler because again it's a 44-year-old film and I recommend you watch it, but the film ends with them writing the article. Or at least they've published one article and then they follow it up by writing a larger expose of the depths of the scandal and how high up it goes all the way to the president's office. And it ends with them writing that. And so the abruptness of that finale was quite shocking to me, considering it was only in the last 10-15 minutes that they started to talk about the fact that their lives were being put in danger by obviously the forces trying to prevent them from releasing the story. And so we only get a glimmer of that. But I do think, like I say, with Spotlight, and even with those films I mentioned, like The Big Short and Bombshell, that again we're stepping away from the people uncovering the story and more examining what the story is and the best way to tell it. Now, in those cases, they decided to break the fourth wall and essentially have information relayed directly to us. But again, having the sort of these characters in the narrative but not part of it does feel like a classic move. I want to leave with a recommendation. There is another YouTuber who does much more, like I mentioned with Lindsay Ellis, whereas mine are much more my current thoughts, unfiltered, unwritten. This YouTuber, again, writes, what are essentially video essays examining film culture. Their name is Nerd Writer One, and they released a video essay examining the role of journalists in film, and the using Spotlight as their source material. Although I do think they do examine All the President's Men, and I would strongly recommend that as a reference, because I think we need to continue to have these portrayals of if we need to sort of remind ourselves of the importance of good, thorough journalism, even if it's through narrative and drama, I think these are the sorts of dramas that we need to look at, that examine the role and necessity of good journalism. So, as you can see, it had quite the impact on me, and has left me with a lot of food for thought. I shall leave you now, and I will see you again tomorrow. Thank you.